Calling planet Earth. 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 We got some feedback. My apologies. Calling planet Earth. This is Christopher. Sun Ra Arkive. Sun Ra's Cosmic Corner. Richard Segan's Spirit in the house. Welcome to our inaugural scheduled official first live stream for Sun Ra Archive. Thank you for joining in. As you may or may not have seen, I did a bunch of tests over the holiday break to kind of explore this format, and they were just kind of impromptu sessions, checking out the software, seeing how this kind of conversation would work, and seeing what the reaction in the community is, if there's some interest here. So we're going live with StreamYard for the first time today. So I'm just going to take it nice and mellow and easy. No stress. Use the chat, please. Let me know how the sound is, if there's any technical difficulties, and kind of bear with me. We'll get better at this as we go. I'd like to welcome Brad and Evelyn. Thanks for joining. Please subscribe to join in on the chat. That's limited to subscribers to keep the spam down. Sam Bird, hello, my friend. Thank you for confirming the sound is good. Great to see you all. Just a moment to take a deep breath and align with the sound of the eternal universe. I'm sure we all had crazy days, got a lot going on in our lives with family, friends, worked, loved ones, health, money, and all the earthly concerns that weigh us down. And this is our time to turn our eyes to the skies and spend some time in Sun Ra's Cosmic Corner. The idea of this is that this is a space for students. This is a learner space. I think we would probably all agree that other than Sunny, Marshall, John, June, and all the orchestra members, that none of us are masters. We're all here to learn. We're all here to share. And I think that's what's kind of exciting about this platform, is that we can get together, meet each other, keep the energy loop going, but also learn from each other, right? And that's what I hope to facilitate. So we're going to have a discussion today about the year 2022 in review, and talk about the new releases that came out as far as CDs, LPs, records, digital releases, etc. The great books that came out this year, The Art of Sun Ra and Sun Ra Sundays by Roger Coleman and Sam Bird, as well as any shows that you caught by the orchestra last year, and just kind of do a general overview to kind of kick things off. And I think that that we can do some deeper dives and focus in on some things. I'll share my thoughts, and then I'll open up the floor to all of you as far as your thoughts, because I'm here. I'm here to learn from you as well. This is Magnolia. She's the one that's jostling around the camera and the mouse. She is my co-pilot with everything Sun Ra. So I'll be typing her psychic thoughts into the chat if she has any, but she's a big Sun Ra fan. But we'll talk about the year in review, do some deep dives, maybe talk about our wish list for this year, things we'd like to see as far as releases, etc. And just take it from there. So thanks for being here. Thanks for bearing with me. And I will say too, as we get more comfortable, or as I get more comfortable with this platform, and as you all kind of get a sense of what this time is about, I have the ability to bring co-hosts and co-presenters on screen. We've got the chat here. please chime in with any thoughts or feedback there. But in the future, if there's something that really resonates with you as far as a topic, something you want to focus on, something you're doing in your own personal study and your personal life, if you're an artist, if you're an author, if you're a musician, and that you have ideas for shows where you want to get in touch with me and perhaps come on and co-present, co-host, please go over to the Sun Ra Archive Facebook channel and send me a private message and let me know, and I'll be able to bring you members of the community on board. I just want to get started slow and not open it up to everybody because I have the ability to bring on 6 people. But I want to take it slow and get comfortable with this and also get a good cadence. The thing I'd like to practice is basically kind of the virtual pass the feather technique, where we'll just kind of sit and listen. If someone has something to say, let me know, raise your hand, type it in the chat, and we'll just try and take it slow and easy. My thought is for now, Friday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll let it run for as long as we want to. I'm thinking anywhere between 60, 90, 120 minutes, but we're just going to feel it out and see how this goes and see what's of benefit to you all. So we're going to start tonight, before we get into the topic of discussing 2022 in review, by further exploring Sun Ra's immeasurable equations, Sun Ra's poetry and written word. I started doing this on the test live streams because when I interviewed Paul Youngquist, the author of Pure Solar World, which is a great book, if you haven't read it, definitely do so. He, other than authoring that book, he is a literature and poetry professor. And when we were talking about the poetry, I asked him, I've been a fan for a lot of years. I've got the books. I've tried reading the poetry, meaning reading it to myself silently in my mind, and it hasn't really clicked for me. Like, what am I missing? And he said, read it out loud. So that's what we're getting in the practice of to begin each of these times together, by reading one of the immeasurable equations by Sun Ra, sounding it out, getting that vibration going, getting the words resonating. And to me, that's made a huge difference as far as my appreciation and understanding of the poetry. So we're going to do that to start. And I do want to say, in the background, you are hearing the 2020 release by the Sun Ra Arkestra under the direction of Marshall Allen. The album is called Swirling. It was released by Strut Art Yard Records. We heard Satellites Are Spinning, Lights on a Satellite to start things off, and now we've just gone into Seductive Fantasy. And I look forward to hearing from some of you if you've seen Marshall and the orchestra recently, because it's been quite some time since I've had the chance to see them. But I love that band and love what Marshall does and brings to the music and his composition. So I want to make sure that always giving a shout out to the Sun Ra Arkestra under the direction of Marshall Allen, and that when we have a chance to talk about them and the music that they're still performing and recording, that we do so. So today's immeasurable equation is called After That, and I'm reading from the Collected Poetry and Prose compiled and edited by James L. Wolfe and Hartmut Gierken. This, I checked, is still in print and available from Amazon. The price has come down considerably since when I bought it. It's about $55. It's beautifully researched, compiled, printed, and as any of you who saw my video where I dropped this on the floor and freaked out and it took a huge digger, it's very well bound as well. So it's going to stand up to all your rigorous study. And I hope I never drop it again. After That by Sun Ra. After that, what is there after that? And that afterwards is, or doubly no, the not of those things which are. If I to be am, then to be is and are. Why did other voices speak to you and enchant your mind? It is what your mind is, must seek to understand. Beyond the planes of earth, light, love. And what are planes of love, if no, you do not? Cascades of emotion, if no, you do not. Shimmering ecstasy, if not, is the wisdom. I have known a heaven all my own. If others know of it, say, or if they do not, to me. I have seen eye to eye with every mind's eye. That I have touched vibrationally upon the planet. Without antagonistic resistance, understanding always, and, basically, why those were as they were. How bitterly long have I searched for all that is mine. Now I must be, and mine is mine. My immortal pure idea, my sound idea, my virgin version. I came to be of, if that conception that I will to be. Beautiful. And the next one's short, and it's called Afterthought. So we'll read two tonight, since Afterthought will be the afterthought to after that. I take my magic wand in hand and touch the mind of the worlds. I speak in sounds. What am I saying? Listen. These are the things spoken from my heart. These are of and are my intimate treasures. I give them to those who live and love both life and living. The words of Sun Ra from the Immeasurable Equations. Those poems make me not want to talk after. I find it very hard to pick up the thread. I feel like just sitting and meditating on it. One other thing I'm going to add when reading these over the past couple weeks, Sun Ra talks about outer darkness, blackness, nothing. It made me think of the Tao Te Ching, which is a very, very special book to me, and one that I like to read whenever I need a grounding, which is frequently. But Sun Ra's poetry reminds me of the Tao when he talks about the nothingness, the eternal blackness. So I thought I'd read the first Tao from the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. This translation that I like is by Stephen Mitchell, but it reminds me of Sun Ra. So for those of you that don't know, the Tao is essentially, kind of in English, the translation is the way. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only manifestations. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. And there's no doubt, we all know Sun Ra was very well read and self-educated, and I have no doubt that that he read the Tao Te Ching, and that and all kinds of thought, philosophy, and reflection were a part of his vision. But just wanted to add that in there because I read it and it's just like reminded me of Sun Ra. So let's see here. Let's look at the chat. Roger Coleman, welcome. Glad you're here. hello and thank you for Sun Ra Sundays. If you and Sam want to reach out via Facebook, I would love at some point in the future to talk to both of you about your book and your work and your music and all the things you're thinking. So reach out if that interests you. So we got Brad, we've got Evelyn Rose, we've got Sam, we've got Roger Coleman. I also, as I said at the top of the show, a shout out to my Sun Ra mentor, Richard Segan, who is always in my thoughts. And all of my friends who have helped me in my Sun Ra studies, if you're not here in the chat, my thanks to you. And if you ever get this message, please join us and let's keep it going. CC, Chocolate City, you out there, you can join us. Third Coast, welcome. So for today's discussion of the year 2020 in review, I have a guest with me who's going to co-pilot. He's been a friend of mine, a Sun Ra friend, for more years than I can keep track of at this point. And we're going to bring him on here and share this discussion with you, Mr. Brother Steve Antonelli. Steve, welcome.
Space greetings, my friend.
Space greetings. Nanu. Welcome, Steve. It's so good to see you. Like, we've been friends for a really long time. We're kind of like co-partners in our own imaginary Outer Spaceways Incorporated organization. And you've been great company and support, and I've learned a lot from you through the years. And we haven't, with the holidays and everything going on, it's been a little while since we've caught up. You and I actually started doing Zooms with our friend Brother Carville during COVID time, when I was kind of originally tossing around this idea, like, should we maybe do something like this to get everybody together? And it's been a while since we did this. So I really was thrilled to get your message that you wanted to join in tonight. So from me to you, welcome, and it's good to see you, and introduce Mr. Antonelli to our audience.
Well, first of all, it's a true pleasure to be here with you and with the community, the people that are on the chat. Lots of familiar names there. Myself, I'm one of these Sun Ra fans that keeps a pretty low profile. Been a collector for a long time. You and I, we go back about 20 years, and I don't know if you remember the first time, back in, I think it was 2002. Back in those days, we were in the just starting to collect mode. And I do remember I can't remember the software program, but there was a chat program with some basic file sharing. And you and I think Suso
Navarrete.
Yeah, you remember Mads Ruby?
Mads Ruby. Of course I do.
Charles Blass.
Monkey.
DC. Yeah, lots of familiar names there. So what I recall is that all of a sudden your name popped up on the chat. And the reason why I said space greetings is because that's exactly what you said to me. And my response was probably, hi, how you doing?
What? I don't want to join your cult.
That's what it is. So, it goes back to 2002.
Nice.
And you and I, we started out kind of slow. I do remember you saying at the time what you wanted to do. Your goal at that point was to collect every unreleased show that was out there, the very best copy. Back in those days, we were trading cassettes, not even digital, really, at that point. And that was the mission, and it appealed to me. I said, geez, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I do remember before we met that the way that I kind of got myself back into Sun Ra was there was a point in time where I went on to Napster. We all remember Napster. And I
Unfortunately.
remember, huh?
Fortunately or unfortunately,
Well, it
I
was a good
still hate those
start.
MP3s.
Uh,
Oh,
I
thank you.
remember punching in Sun Ra, and then all of these songs popped up, and I'm going, wow, all I got to do is click a button, and there we go. And as it turns out, I think it was a lot of the Evidence releases at that point, the reissues on CD. And that kind of reignited myself. I mean, I go back to really like 1978 time period when I first started the orchestra. And there was a long period of time where things were pretty dormant as far as, maybe I was so blown away. It took me 20 years to get over it and get back into it. But yeah, that's how we started out. I do see that you're wearing your Sun Ra Cosmic Corner. Good to see that. Richard Segan's radio show. There you go. Very nice to see. Richard was a guy that he wasn't really one of those computer guys. He was more of an old-fashioned, old style. And I know that he's a very good friend of yours. And I got to know him through you. And I don't know if you remember, but back in that time period, we went to a show in UMass Amherst, Alan Silva. Remember that?
Sure, yeah, the Magic Triangle series.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Ew.
Marshall was part of a band of, I gotta think it was 15 to 20 musicians. Very, freestyle type music. And as we were listening to the show, I was watching Richard, and he was waiting for Marshall to take his first solo, and he just absolutely exploded when he did.
He did. He adored Marshall.
He did. He did.
As I recall, I don't. Maybe the memory is better than the reality, but Richard was so connected to the orchestra. My memory is that he actually, when Marshall started playing his first solo, he got up.
He did,
and he would almost conduct. He was cluing in and connecting to Marshall's energy, and he would stand there and he would just, he would just praise him on and on and on.
He was just waiting for that moment.
Yep.
And it was terrific to see. And so that's how we got started. And, you and I have been partners. The way I like to explain it, I think I've mentioned this to you, is that if you can picture two Saturn moons, right? Moons around Saturn. You're on a moon, I'm on a moon. There you go. And our orbits, every once in a while, they get close to each other. And I remember when you were doing your live broadcasts during the holiday break, that you felt this new surge of energy. And my reaction to that was, uh-oh, here we go. Here we go again. You can't keep up with Christopher. Once he gets on a roll, all you can do is support the guy. And that's what I've tried to do is, for every 10 things that Christopher does, maybe I do one thing. And so I'm kind of a supporter to you. But it's been a lot of fun. We've established quite a collection at this point, and it's a lot easier now to get the music. The days of trading are over for me. My thing these days is, what I like to do is to do the research part. And, we'll talk a little bit about that today, possibly. But I like to kind of see, how did things really unfold over the years? And, we keep a database, and starting with, of course, earthly recordings, great foundation of information, of course. But now there's all sorts of other sources out there. And Sun Ra Sundays, yes, I'll admit, I've grabbed material there. We've added that to the database in some cases. So we have multiple sources on, say, the same concert. And it's kind of nice to be able to, look at all the different sources of information and different viewpoints and use it to kind of put together a more complete picture. And it never will be completed. It will always be a work in process, to the point where I find out this week, we're going to talk a little bit about Universe in Blue and a new issue on Bandcamp, I think on vinyl and CD, right? So a couple of bonus tracks that when I saw that, I go, I'll take 2 new tracks. That sounds great. And, we'll talk about that. But Discipline 27, and then one of my favorite tunes, Intergalactic Research, just an example. And then some of the other things that have come out in 2022. It's just, the library keeps growing, and it's kind of nice that it just kind of happens, and the more people that get exposed to it, then it just helps continue the legacy. It's really good to see.
Yeah, I agree. And I think regardless of where you are personally, kind of in your relationship to the music, it's always inspiring. I remember the first time I heard the music, I was inspired, and here we are, after all these years, and I'm still, I was going to say just as inspired. I'm actually more inspired.
Yeah.
The fact that we could have spent so much time with this music and still know nothing is so inspiring and such a testament to Sun Ra. And I think it really kind of shows like the opportunity for this community. If this type of platform, the live streams, is good, it shows the opportunity for us to share, learn from, and inspire each other, because there are really so few Sun Ra fans in the world, and there are even fewer really dedicated, highly interested fans that sometimes, unless you've got a real close friend or someone locally that turns you on to the music or whatever, you kind of spend a large, or at least I've spent a very large portion of my life as a Sun Ra fan in kind of like this monastic isolation. So to be able to get people together and hear from other people and hear other interpretations, perceptions of the music, to learn from different people's different types of skills or expertise, really rounds out the experience, and really the energy compounds and builds on itself, right? And to me, that's really healthy, and a really positive thing, way beyond the entertainment factor. Yeah, Sun Ra Arkestra, great music, put on a great show. The costumes were awesome. The concept's awesome. The dancing's awesome. You can take it at entertainment face value, but there are so many aspects to it that if you want to go deeper, there's so many things for you, whether it's music, poetry, art, dance, um, spirituality, etc., that it ends up becoming kind of a fulfilling practice in and of itself. Like, you know, um, I always get in these, as you know, Steve, and as I've said on the other live streams, I get in these phases where I go so deep into Sun Ra that basically I just flare out. Like, I will spend so much time in the music that I just kind of need to take a break.
Yeah.
And reflect and do other things to kind of gear up. Like, I can't sustain it. But one thing I found over the past couple of weeks that you have all reminded me of is how much fun it is to engage and to be a part of a community, and how not only energizing it may be for us personally, but how fun it is to see the joy that the music brings to other people, right? So, I mean, I basically just went online for the live stream and I didn't tell anybody. And then all of a sudden, Brad pops up, Jason Voss pops up,
Yeah.
Steve pops up, Sam pops up, Roger, and it builds on itself. And, Steve and I were talking about the year 2022 in review, and here I am, thinking I'm going to do this well presented overview, giving equal time to everything. And then we went down the universe and blue rabbit hole. and we're pulling out Slugs tapes and comparing the bonus tracks on the CD. Hey, didn't Michael Anderson play that on the ESP radio show or the 2006 KCR? And then pulling out multiple versions and comparing them. That I just really enjoy the friendship from you, Steve, and from all the people in the chat, and I find it really fulfilling. So, in some small way, I hope that what we can facilitate with the stream does that for all of you too. And to just make one more point to what Steve referred to as traders or collectors, and I'm sure you all do this yourselves. And an opportunity we have here with the live streams is that now with digital, if we plan for these subjects with a little heads up, or even if we want to improvise and go on the fly, now we've got stuff at our fingertips, or at least a little easier within reach. So what I did to get ready for today was to start pulling all of the different pressings and versions of Universe in Blue I have. Yeah. Start opening, Omniverse, Sun Ra, Space is the Place, Earthly Recordings, all the liner notes, taking pictures, asking Steve questions. So if you want to throw out topics for future shows, we can do a little research and start to pull together these raw materials. So if we talk about a tune, I'll be able to play it in the background. And maybe we'll be able to kind of share or pull together some of the research and documentation that we've put together.
Yeah, you've got, the people that are on this broadcast right now. I mean, it's a high quality group we know that, people like Brad, Sam, just as a couple of examples, they've been fans for a long time and, deeper in their studies than maybe you and I even. And so I, just as Christopher has suggested, be a co-host. I'm not an expert at this at all. First time I've actually done it. And
and you were actually apprehensive about doing it, weren't you? Yeah. You didn't say it to me, but I could feel it.
I was.
Then you slept on it and you were like, what? A Sun Ra show? I'm not going to do that? Yeah. Of course I am.
I have to say, I told you earlier today, but I actually didn't sleep last night because I kept thinking about slugs. And that's a great reason not to sleep, right? Usually you think about all the problems that we have at work and things like that. Okay. And here I am, I can't get to sleep because I'm thinking about all the different, there's a lot of material that actually has been released that came out of slugs. And, thank you to Michael Anderson and Irwin for sure, right? Because that's where it's basically originating from. And they like to throw curves at us because we're going to talk about some dates today. And I'm confused, not sure if, Universe in Blue, we talk in 1971, 1972. So there's always that, that mystery. I think that's the right word to use here about, when exactly did they make that performance?
Yep.
Does it really matter? Yeah, to me it matters. It's my thing,
It matters, and then at the end of the day, it doesn't. It's
no, in the grand scheme.
I mean, it's like the Tootsie Pop commercial, and the answer to the question of how many licks, the world may never know. And once we have all the answers, then it might get a lot less fun. We're never gonna know.
We're talking about recordings that happened over 50 years ago, and it's still coming out. And it's like, it's unbelievable.
Especially when you take into consideration the question, did Sun Ra really want us to know? I mean, he put out plenty of records and liner notes that were misleading dates or wrong dates or switching titles, So I think part of the joy of being a Sun Ra fan is that the mystery and the adventure and the search is part of it. So, but yeah, I mean, as a researcher and a discographer, yeah, of course I like to know all the details, but I'm trying to be Zen here, Steve, and say, I'm letting it go.
Well, at the end of the day, I just love listening to the music.
Yeah. I don't need to know whether it was the 16th or the 17th of 1971. Okay, so we're about a half an hour in, and let's kind of get into things as far as the releases go. Um, I see in the chat here, Evelyn Rose, you asked a question, is this on the Internet Archive? I don't see much there just now. If you can clarify your question, we might be able to answer it. I'm not, is what on the Internet Archive, and what are you looking for there? And maybe we can help you. So, I mean, just as Steve said, um, refer to the show notes in YouTube. I'm creating a running list of URLs to find all the stuff that we're talking about. So Sun Ra LLC, their Bandcamp page is the place you should go for digital versions and streaming versions of all of the authorized recordings. Um, CDs and records are available on Amazon, Dusty Groove, any retailer. Official releases by Cosmic Myth Records, Art Yard / Strut, Modern Harmonic, Sun Ra, Bandcamp. That's really the route that you want to go to find music. People like Jason Voss, or I should say, Jason Voss runs a great YouTube channel where he focuses on unreleased rare Sun Ra recordings on YouTube. That's the Intergalactic channel. But I will say, out of respect for Sun Ra, Marshall Allen, and the orchestra, the Sun Ra LLC, and all the work that's being done, I would like to keep our focus primarily from a researcher's student's point of mind, meaning buy the official records, go see the band, support the band. We're not here to share links to free versions of the albums. We're going to be very conscientious when we talk about unreleased music or anything that is kind of gray area. We're going to be very conscientious about respecting Marshall and the orchestra and the LLC. So when you ask questions about where you can find things online, please be specific, and also look at the show notes, because if we're mentioning a book or a record or something like that, I'm going to make sure I put the link where you can go find it and buy it. So that's a little caveat there. I'm going to put up a video now. I've made a little video of graphics that's going to loop, so you don't have to look at Steve and I only for the rest of the night as we get into this discussion. And I'm going to cue up some music, get the video started, and take a couple second breather, close the door, let the cat out, and then we're going to get into the year of 2022 in the Sun Ra cosmos.
Christopher, let me just add to that even your own page, there's a lot of original material there that you've put out, your podcasts and some material through Richard again. So I encourage everybody to check out what Christopher has put up for material on his own YouTube page.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And links for that are also in the show notes, the comments here in YouTube. Sun Ra Archive, blogspot.com, the C. Eddie 10165 YouTube channel that you're already on, Sun Ra Archive, Facebook. But yeah, all the links are there. And thanks for the shout out, Steve. I appreciate it. And if you have links, or you're running your own blogs, pages, putting out your own records and stuff, put them in the chat and we'll add them to the master list of Sun Ra links. So let's just chill for a second. I'm going to catch my breath, and we'll be back in 1 second to talk about the music. All right. Playing now, we've got Chopin, the first track from the latest Sun Ra Arkestra under the direction of Marshall Allen release called Living Sky. Came out October 7th of 2022. We're going to be covering that in our discussion. Thanks for letting me take a breather there. Magnolia needs to go in and out, and she doesn't really understand the whole streaming thing. So, all right, we have all of the releases pulled together, the ones that I've bought, and I'll show those to you. Put together a bunch of notes that we can read through, things from Omniverse Sun Ra, earthly recordings of Sun Ra Sundays, etc. in regards to the recordings. And we're just going to do a general overview of what came out and what happened in the year 2022. And then we'll probably circle back and do a deeper dive on some of them. So please add your comments, your observations and reflections on the music. And I think Steve and I have already figured out from our side conversation preparing for tonight that we've got a lot to say about Universe in Blue, which was one of the reissues from this year. So thanks to Intergalactic Music, Jason Voss, he put out a post on Facebook that kind of gave me the idea for this discussion, talking about what happened in 2022 and what came out. So that's what we're going to cover. And we're going to do it, the recordings in chronological order. And there are also two fine books that came out this year. Sun Ra Art on Saturn, published by Fantagraphics. That was curated by Erwin Chusid of Sun Ra LLC primarily. And that's a beautiful art book, LP sized, of many Sun Ra record covers, beautiful scans, beautifully restored artwork presented at full size with all the different variations of artwork. There is some text in that, and it's kind of too unwieldy to show up on screen, but highly recommended. And then the other book that came out, as we said earlier, Sun Ra Sundays by Mr. Coleman and Mr. Bird, which collects the blog articles that Roger had been posting for many years as he explored the Sun Ra catalog. That has been collected into both a print and PDF version. And hopefully we'll get Roger and Sam on to discuss that book in depth in the future. But I've included a link in the notes there so you can go buy a copy. They've also kind of this, I'm not sure, the term's escaping me, but essentially kind of open source content where they've also made a PDF available for online reading. But I encourage you to support their work, and it's very reasonably priced. It's available on Amazon for around $20, so order a copy. It's on my wish list, and I will promise to do that, especially before we talk to Roger and Sam. But I had been reading those blog articles for many years. So, all right. So we have 4 releases this year. Let me bring up my notes. We had The Living Sky, which is the latest release that's playing now from the Sun Ra Arkestra under the direction of Marshall Allen. And that is available on Bandcamp. It came out digitally, came out on CD, which I do not have, and it also came out on vinyl. And I believe that there were 2 different versions of the vinyl. There was a limited colored press with some art prints that was released on the Omni label. and I believe that there was a colored vinyl variant as well that was not limited, or a black vinyl version that was not limited. And I believe, and I'm not entirely sure, that the Omni label imprint, catalog number OS 1001, that's actually the orchestra's own label. That's my assumption, because their previous record came out through Strut Art Yard, Swirling. So I think they've started their own imprint. So I hope that, like the Living Sky, now that they've got that up and running, that we can get lots of new Marshall-led orchestra records. And I'm just going to take this opportunity to say this out loud. My number one wish list item is a full-length recording of the Sun Ra Arkestra under Marshall's direction, performing all of the compositions of Marshall Allen himself. Marshall is a great composer in his own right, who carries on the tradition and the aesthetic of Sun Ra, but with his own unique perspective and touch. And if you've seen the orchestra live over the years, you know that Marshall has done some beautiful compositions that are currently, as far as I'm aware, unrecorded or unreleased. So my wish list is that we get a full-length Sun Ra Arkestra album of Marshall's compositions. There was one that he wrote around 2001, around 9/11, called Out of the Blue, that they performed in that era. That was absolutely gorgeous. And that's when they had Nina, I believe her name was Nina, the harp player. I saw them perform that a couple times that fall of 2001, Out of the Blue. And I've wished for 20 years since then to get a recording of the orchestra doing that. So Sam says that Omni is an independent record label out of New York and Istanbul. So Omni CEOs and label bigwigs, if you're out there, please record an album of Marshall's compositions with the orchestra. It'll be a great record. So that was a big release for 2022. Steve, any thoughts on that before we move on?
Well, I haven't listened to Living Sky yet, so that's on my to-do list, my buy list. I do have Swirling, which I thought was also a beautiful album. What is nice is that the orchestra is now releasing their own material, whether it's Sun Ra compositions. And I agree with you that Marshall, from his melody book, as he likes to say, he's got some great compositions over the years. Some played live. And now I'm trying to remember some of the titles, but I remember back in the, say, 2006, 2008 time period, he was putting out a lot of his own original music then, not necessarily released, but he would play them at concerts. So that's a great wish list right there. And now I feel guilty for not listening to Living Sky. So,
well, I mean, to be honest, and we're going to, I'll mention this with some of the other releases. We're really in a period where there's an embarrassment of riches. Other than when Sonny and the band were fully in flight and kicking, this, in my opinion, or in my time as a Sun Ra fan, this is the best time to be a Sun Ra fan, because so much music is coming out, whereas before we would scrape and beg for, fifth generation cassette copies of long out of print Saturns, and we would have a wish list of 40 Saturn records that we hoped we would hear someday. And I mean, now there's so much material coming out that you can't possibly keep up with it all. So if you haven't heard it, obviously go get it, but I don't think any of us need to feel like any less of a fan or apologize for not having heard some of this stuff, because there's just so much of it. It's crazy. And we're all on a budget too, so it's like you put it on your wish list, and when you can get it, you're in for a treat. But no judgments here. There's still a bunch of them that I don't have. But I think, as far as saying much more about Living Sky, it's very well produced, it's very well captured. It's essentially the band live in the studio. It sounds like the Marshall Orchestra. Um, it's a good mix of tunes between originals and current orchestra songs and classic Sun Ra compositions. But I really think, the orchestra, the current orchestra in and of itself deserves its own special, episode in the future. So,
And they're a strong band. They're still, I mean, who would have thought in 2023 that the orchestra is still going and putting out beautiful music? You go onto YouTube and listen to some of the live performances, you're going to hear things that you just say, this is just amazing stuff. And the members change a little bit over time, but they got their act together. It's just unbelievable. So anything that can be done to support them, 100% behind that.
I look forward to hearing from some of you that have been lucky enough to catch the orchestra in the past couple of years, what your experience has been. Because, like I said, it's been years since I've had the chance to see them in person. So I'm really out of touch. The last time I saw them, Danny Ray was still on the planet with us. So there's been a lot of movement since then. So.
Well, you can tell Noel has really taken on kind of a leading role, playing the baritone now these days. And strong, really, really well. Yep. So it's just amazing that they keep passing the baton. I saw a comment earlier about Farid Baran. Yeah, I mean, guy's great.
Yep. Yeah, Farid is an excellent piano player. I don't think he's currently performing with the orchestra.
No, he's not.
But I'm not 100% on that. Like I said, I haven't seen them in person in quite some time. Sam Bird says my kids went to see them in Chicago last year and loved it. This after years of me forcing Sun Ra on them.
Well, I'm working on my 8-year-old son.
I want to hear the Wiggles. Nope, it's time for Fireside Chat with Lucifer, kids.
You get the kids to really start liking it, then it's being passed to the next generation. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, so Farid is playing amazing on both of the current or recent orchestra albums. So that brings us into the rest of the releases from 2022, physical releases that are catalog titles or re-releases. Not going to touch on the digital only releases or updates like Media Dreams. Because two things selfishly, we can talk about them if you all want to and want to step up, but I'm a physical media person first and foremost. As far as my purchasing habits, I end up digitally always going for FLAC and lossless. But so I'm not buying like all of the digital only releases and redos. Like Media Dreams, for instance, I didn't get the 2022 version because I already bought many of the previous versions and I haven't played catch up yet. So we're going to focus today on the 2022 physical releases. That also did come out digitally and on Bandcamp, but the first one is Futuristic Sounds of Sun Ra, originally released on the Savoy label. This is the 60th anniversary edition that was released by Craft Recordings. So Craft is kind of more of a high-end, quote-unquote, audiophile re-release label. And the cool thing about this release is that the LP got an all analog mastering by Kevin Gray, who's a very well-known current audiophile mastering engineer, and audiophiles that really value well-cut, good-sounding records from as close to the master tape as possible know the name Kevin Gray. it's often associated with the mastering engineer Steve Hoffman. If any of you are also on the Steve Hoffman board. So for Kevin Gray to do an all analog cut of a Sun Ra album is a real treat. And this also came out on CD as well, and that has a different mastering for the CD by, let me see if I have the name here, by Paul Blakemore. So the curious thing about this album that I will say is that, and this is before we get into reading anything about it. So when Futuristic Sounds originally came out on Savoy, it was released as a mono recording, but it was recorded in at least old school 2-channel stereo with the hard left and right panning that I most associate with the old Beatles stereo recordings, where all of the vocals are in one channel and all of the instruments are in another channel. So when this was re-released in stereo in Japan on CD in 1993, and now most recently here on this version, it's in that very pristine hard pan stereo, which throws some people, some modern headphone listeners off because it's so discreet. But from a clarity standpoint, to hear what's going on in the studio, that hard right, left, right panning, along with the Kevin Gray master, is a real treat. And there's a lot that we could say about this record. Maybe we'll come back to it, but thumbs up as far as the quality control and the value for money for this re-release. Really well done all around on Craft Recordings, authorized by the Sun Ra LLC. Master tapes probably came from Michael Anderson. Liner notes are by Erwin Chused, and you can tell from the fidelity. And we could do a shootout in the future comparing. This is the closest to the master tape that we've had on any of the previously released versions. I'd be curious to hear from Michael, and they don't mention this in the liner notes, whether it's from the actual studio multi-track master or whether it's from a production master that would have been sent out for vinyl cutting. But it sounds the best that it's ever sounded, and probably the best that it's ever going to. Any thoughts on Futuristic Sounds, Steve? Have you heard this one?
Yeah, and it now is the best version that you can possibly get of that particular album. The question I had, and you might have just answered it, I was under the impression that was Savoy owned material and not part of Sun Ra LLC. So you're saying that it is part of.
Yeah, so it was originally recorded by Savoy Records, produced by Tom Wilson, but this is a Sun Ra LLC authorized release.
Okay.
And I'm not going to speak for them because I don't know this 100%, but my understanding is that they were trying to pursue all of the one-offs like the Savoy and bring those under the ownership and authorization of the Sun Ra estate. So I would imagine, based on this release, that the LLC has been successful in getting the ownership rights to this, or at least having involvement with Savoy Records, who I'm not even sure. Savoy is not still in business. I'm not sure who actually owns that label, but it is authorized. So if it's not 100% a Savoy release, it's a co-branded release. It says Savoy Records here, but I don't know with Craft Recordings if that's really more for nostalgia and posterity or whether Savoy's still operating. But I know that the estate has been pursuing getting all of the recordings under one banner.
And the other thing is, the significance of that particular album. That was the first album recorded in New York, or Newark, I believe, actually. But after the orchestra had moved from Chicago to New York. And to me, it really still has the sound of a Chicago type recording. So, I personally think it's kind of a transition type album. And of course, the orchestra, they take on a whole different sound shortly thereafter. So it has historical importance from that standpoint as well. I think
Yeah,
most Sun Ra fans, they're aware that that was the first one that after the band had moved from Chicago. Of course, gone through Montreal and had some trouble there, made their way to New York,
right,
and the rest is history.
right. Yeah, and it's a unique album, um, also because, excuse me, because it was recorded for Savoy and produced by Tom Wilson at Medallion Studios in Newark. It's one of um, the best sounding studio
Yeah,
recordings of the early period, um, as far as the engineers and the level of production, as far as the capture of the tape. And because Savoy was a relatively well, it was certainly larger than Saturn Records.
yeah,
That the Savoy album had really pretty decent distribution at the time. So for at the time and for newer Sun Ra fans, it was an easier to find album. So it ended up being, because of that and the sound quality, a gateway record for a lot of people. Would have been the first album that they heard, and I want to make sure that we don't get too in the weeds like we like to do, because we could talk about this and other records, like, for an entire hour or 2 hours. There's a lot of other things to say about this record, and maybe we'll do a breakout. Let's keep to our plan of doing an overview of
yeah.
2022, and we can do a dedicated show about futuristic sounds, or that period that we're talking about in between Chicago, Canada, New York, and get a little deeper into this one. One thing that I notice about futuristic sounds, and this is just personally. So I was doing a deep dive over the past few weeks about the trajectory of kind of space, spiritual, esoteric themes in Sun Ra's composition. And if you look at futuristic sounds of Sun Ra, especially compared to the Chicago era and introducing some of the space age themes, but being very focused on spiritual life and ancient cultures. And then New York really being the flowering and the blooming of the outer space motifs. Futuristic Sounds is really kind of an anomaly in my mind as far as
Mm.
the song titles and the subject matter. It really is transitionary with, so the tracks are bassism of sounds and something else. What's that? Where is tomorrow? The beginning, China Gate, New Day, Tapestry from an Asteroid, Jet Flight, Looking Outward, and Space Jazz Reverie. So it's like we get a touch of ancient culture with China Gate. We get a bit of a look forward to the space age with Tapestry from an Asteroid and Space Jazz Reverie. But this, to me, this album almost feels very earthly,
Yeah.
um, in the tone and the subject matter. It seems to be kind of like about the jet propulsion age, less so than the ancient history and the futuristic um, space age. So just a little observation.
A little out of character, the jet propulsion.
Yeah, well, and and he covered that in unreleased songs,
Yeah.
but this is one of a rare record where we kind of conceptually, that the way that those song titles hang together, I don't see it relating, to your point, to Chicago and New York directly. I mean, it really is kind of like this weird anomaly in the discography, in a discography of every entry being a weird anomaly. This one's always kind of stuck out for me. And yeah, as Brad says, Ricky Murray on vocals, on China Gate. They are sublime. Ricky, beautiful, beautiful vocalist. All right, so let's move on from that because I've got Omniverse open and Earthly Recordings, and there's a lot more that we could say about futuristic sounds, but we'll save it for another day. We'll save it for another day. So next up, and Steve, let's just touch on this cursory reference and then go on to some of the other ones and come back to it because you and I already went off the deep end with
Universe in Blue.
the Cosmic Myths Records re-release of Sun Ra and his Blue Universe Orchestra's Universe in Blue. I have the CD. I don't have the vinyl yet. It appears to me, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, it appears to me that perhaps supply chain issues as far as vinyl pressing might be backed up because it looks like some people that pre-ordered it got their copies, but now all of the retailers are sold out and waiting for stock. So I think that the vinyl is still coming, but I don't see that it's currently available. So Cosmic Myth Records being the imprint of Sun Ra LLC, I believe this is their 5th release in this series that includes My Brother the Wind, Magic City, Monorails and Satellites, God is More Than Love Can Ever Be. This is their latest installation, which, other than being a great record and a deserving canon record, sounds amazing. Steve, your thoughts?
Universe in Blue. It does. There's one track that is sub quality because that's the way it was originally recorded, but the rest of it is absolutely amazing. Discipline 27. I have a theory that that's the earliest version of that particular track. I'm not sure about that. And then, of course, Intergalactic Research. Such a delight to see that released. And for those that I hope people are familiar with that particular track. It's to my knowledge only showed up in concerts 4 or 5 times, and that's it. So it's just a welcome addition to the discography.
It is, yeah. And Steve and I, when we were talking about it, already started to go down the rabbit hole, and we have a lot more to say about it. As far as the bonus tracks, I've got all my versions. I think I've got 6 different pressings of this throughout the years that we can talk about. You know how we got to this amazing pressing quality and transfer and stuff. But let's leave that for a dedicated conversation because we could spend the rest of the night on Universe in Blue, and I want to just touch on the rest of the great stuff that came out this year. So forgive me
in general
being quick, but as you know, with Sun Ra, I'm long-winded, and I've already burned through an hour here. So,
speaking of which, I'm going to take a quick break so I can plug in my computer.
Sure.
Be right back.
Yep. All right. Let's see what we got going on in the chat here. Yeah, so Sam was lucky. He got his copy of Universe in Blue on vinyl, and I'm sure it's going to be coming at some point in the future. I'm just guessing that, the pressing plans for vinyl are behind like they have been for years because of COVID and the vinyl boom. But when that comes out, I'll look forward to that. But in the meantime, we got the CD, and it's we're going to move on from that. But gather your thoughts on Universe in Blue because I think it deserves its own show, and the bonus tracks are very interesting too. But once you start thinking about the Slug Saloon period, 1971, 1972, when these recordings from Universe in Blue actually are, and start looking into it, then you realize that there's a Universe in Blue sessions track on Modern Harmonics Thunder of the Gods release, and then you're way down the rabbit hole, and we've got hours of discussion. So for the year 2022, I'm going to keep trucking. The next thing that came out from Modern Harmonic, which is an imprint of Sunday's Records, is Ra to the Rescue. Came out on both CD and vinyl. And Modern Harmonic does a great job across the board. But I will say two things in regards to their releases that always impresses me. Jay Millar, Bob Irwin, from a production, executive production, and spirit of the label standpoint, put out consistently fantastic, high quality work. And as curators, they're A plus, top of the line. The shout out I want to give is for two things. And the first is the art director and graphic designer for Sunday's Modern Harmonic, who I believe is doing all of the Sun Ra reissue artwork. The gentleman's name is John Hunt, and I'm hoping that we can get him on for a show to discuss what it's like concepting and doing art that's true to the spirit of Sun Ra for these reissues. But I love his artwork, so kudos on the art direction. The other thing I will say about Sundays and Modern Harmonic, and this has always been the case for Sundays back to the first NRBQ reissue that I bought from that label, is that they're an original and they do a great job with vinyl re-releases. The pressing quality, the quality control, the aesthetics, the attention to detail for people that like vinyl, meaning a Mylar outer sleeve comes with it. You don't have to buy your own resealable bag, and a reproduction mock obi strip, colored vinyl, etc. is all just, but the pressing quality and the mastering is always immaculate with Modern Harmonic Sundays. So if you kind of like are weighing the value of your dollar and how to get as many of these reissues as possible, who am I to talk? Because I bought the bullet for this one and got them both. But if you're thinking, well, should I get the CD or the vinyl? You can always go with the vinyl for Modern Harmonic and know that you're not going to be disappointed. They're really worth it. We're very lucky with all the Sun Ra authorized labels, but Modern Harmonic Sundays, just they do vinyl perfectly. So you're always good to go with the vinyl. Ra to the Rescue. It's a Sun Ra record. It's a great record, but as a standalone album, I don't have too much to say about it right now, because I think about this very late 70s, early 80s period and all the records that came out that were released at that time and recorded at similar venues. In my mind, I think of them kind of as one body of work. So when I listen to these, I listen to it less as someone who was around at the time that bought Ra to the Rescue and listened to it over and over until their next show or the next Sun Ra album. I got into this period in kind of one bulk period where they all kind of blend together for me. So I think, as far as a deeper dive discussion, I would tend towards discussing the whole period more so than the individual records out of context. But highly recommended. And, I don't have much else to say other than the Squat Theater period is fantastic. A lot of good records came out, and there's a lot of great audience tapes from that venue too. yeah, that 1983 release of Rada the Rescue, definitely go for it. And before we get to the next one, I'm going to bring Steve back in. Hello, Steve.
Hi, I'm back.
For the latest one that just recently came out called Prophet. And this one's also on Modern Harmonic Sundays. And I only have the CD for this. I don't have the vinyl. But I believe the vinyl is shipping. It's on my wish list. But because it just came out and because it's a previously unreleased recording, I haven't really lived with it long enough to give you a full review um, other than context. And this is what I will say about it. And I know I gave it to Steve to listen to for the first time today. But what I will say is that this, again, has a really cool cover design by John Hunt that picks up cues from the vintage original Saturn records and marries the ancient Egyptian uh, analog art with the whole digital theme and the Prophet synthesizer. So very cool, kind of from a continuity standpoint, from an art direction standpoint. But this was originally recorded as a part of the Bill Sebastian sessions at what was the name of that? Let me get what was the name of that studio, Steve, where
Mission Control
show was?
Is that right? Mission Control.
Mission Control, but wasn't it like wasn't
OVC?
it called OVC?
Yeah.
Right. And the previous recordings that we had from this period that were released, I'm looking for the earthly recordings, were the two VHS videotapes that came out in the mid to late 80s that the Sun Ra Arkestra was selling at live shows that included songs recorded at that studio, but with the video and the light accompaniment. It was Calling Planet Earth was one song and one video.
Sunset on the Nile, I believe, was the other one.
On the Nile was the other one. So that's where I previously knew these sessions from. But then all of a sudden, previously unknown, I think to most all of us, wasn't in earthly recordings, and we didn't know that other things were recorded, but that the orchestra did at least an additional session using the Prophet synthesizer with Sun Ra on the Prophet synthesizer.
It's very unique.
Yeah, and I believe so not the
Yamaha.
Not the Yamaha, the sequential circuits, I think, was the other synth around that time. But the Prophet, and I don't believe, you guys can confirm, I don't believe that he ended up doing any other sessions or buying one himself. I think the Prophet is a synth that Bill Sebastian had at his studio that Sun Ra ended up being inspired by, and that's why we got this record.
It's kind of like you put an instrument in front of Sun Ra and he's just going to do his thing, and it results in a very unique sound and really, really great recording, I think. And this is in my backyard, by the way. Westford, Massachusetts is about 30 minutes from where I live, so near and dear to my heart, just for personal reasons. But I believe that the master tape sat in Bill Sebastian's garage for like 30 years and then came to light.
Right. Yeah, that's what the liner notes say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that Brother Cleve, who recently left the planet, did the new mix of these tapes. They weren't previously known or mixed, so this is a new modern mix. of this material. And like I said, I haven't spent enough time with it to really be well versed. Let me look at the chat and see if any of you have thoughts on it. OVC was the video synthesizer, right, Brad? Thank you, brother Marcus. So OVC was the something visual controller. So in those videos, if you look them up on YouTube, Sunset on the Nile and Calling Planet Earth, you'll see Sun Ra, June Tyson, Michael Ray dancing, singing, playing in front of the OVC, which was Bill Sebastian's light controller. Jason Voss from Intergalactic Music says he thinks more releases from the 86 sessions are coming. Well, that's great news. And that the first thing I thought when I saw this is, well, if there are master tapes of this prophet material, what other was Calling Planet Earth and Sunset on the Nile multi-tracked, and can we go back to those master tapes and get new mixes? Is there more to those tracks, more to those sessions? Were there other things recorded? So Jason, that's great to hear, because that was my first thought. What else comes from those sessions? Sam Bird says, I have never seen those VHS releases. So Sam, is what you're saying that you've never seen the footage, or that you've never seen the physical original videotapes that the orchestra sold? Because I believe those videos should be on YouTube. And I recorded my friend Richard Segan. He, of course, bought the original VHS that I transferred to DVD. But yeah, they're really cool period videos, well worth seeing. So if they're not on YouTube, I'm amazed. I would only guess that I believe that they were on YouTube at one point, and my guess is that Mr. Bill Sebastian or the LLC probably made a copyright claim, because maybe we'll be getting a re-release of not just the audio, but maybe we'll be getting a Blu-ray or DVD release of the video footage, which would be fantastic. That might be why it's not on YouTube right now, because I think it was up there. It was widely circulated in collectors' circles. Sam asks, aren't the photos from Other Side of the Sun from this studio? Yes. So the back cover of the Other Side of the Sun LP has pictures of the OVC in the background. And was the OVC at the Modern Theater, Steve, when you saw the orchestra there?
Yep, 1978, and it was right there while the orchestra played, and was fascinating to watch, as well as listening to the music, especially during that time period. So that's when it started. That's when the collaboration between Bill Sebastian and Sun Ra started. I know it carried into, I believe, 1982 time period. They continued to work together. I was not aware of this recording for sure. So it's again a nice treat. The only thing I'll say, I have to say it's maybe a little bit negative, and I hate to say it, but there's a couple of tracks with June Tyson, and she is definitely not her normal self. She has either a cold or laryngitis, but her voice is not what it normally is. So that's the only drawback that I see coming from that release.
Yep. And I appreciate that, and I agree. And I guess my only comment is that June, being one of my favorite vocalists of all time, and who is incredibly consistent both live and on record, this week was the first time in 30 years where I realized that I thought I was a Sun Ra completist, but maybe I'm actually not. This is the first two tracks that I've heard on an official release that I would have been okay without.
Yeah, I agree.
And I make no judgments, because obviously the historical value of it is important. And you and I, as traders, Steve, we would have been all over this material, trading for it. But as an official release, I was surprised.
Yeah.
I will leave it at that.
Yeah.
Thankful but surprised.
And she's the last person you ever want to be critical of, but obviously she's not 100%.
I mean, she was ill.
Yeah.
And those are takes that would have never, ever, ever been released under any other circumstances.
I agree.
So, yeah, but an all-around great release, and I look forward to seeing this cover on vinyl, and I look forward to talking to the designer John Hunt in the future. And the Bill Sebastian, it reminds me, I actually, when I was doing the Sun Ra Archive podcast, I had contacted Bill Sebastian's office to see if we could speak to him and do an interview, because the OVC, and specifically the modern theater shows in Boston that Steve saw with that, mean a lot to him. So I really wanted to see if we could get Bill for an interview to talk about his work, but also his experiences with Sun Ra and maybe some recollections from those live performances that the orchestra did with the OVC. So I never heard back. So if any of you knows Bill or knows someone that works with Bill, please, put the word out. He's welcome, and we'd love to hear from him and hear his story, because it's a really fascinating one. Anything else about Prophet, Steve?
No, I think that's it. But again, for that time period, that's not normally my favorite time period, 1986, but it does stand out as unique because of the instrument, the Prophet that he's playing. You can hear it. He's all over it, doing what Sun Ra does.
Yeah, and it's it's a very uncommon recording for 86 because of that. And I equate, in my mind, the first thing that comes to 86 is live shows, right? Venues like Hunt's, the Blue Pelican, etc., and very conventional, for lack of a better word, but dialed in orchestra performances, meaning the cosmodrama was very patterned at that point. And the band, while they shook up the set list, they were very consistent from night to night. You got a Sun Ra piano solo tune, you got a blues improvisation, you got an improv band, free introduction, you've got a Space Chance outro, and they were very, not scripted, but the cosmodrama, the performance as a ritual was very embedded. So this release really is very uncommon to what I associate with 1986 orchestra music. So it's very, very cool from that standpoint. So that's the new releases for physical releases for 2022. I mean, an amazing bounty of riches that I will admit I'm still catching up with. And if I was being completely honest, I'm still catching up with like the past several years of Sun Ra releases. So thank you to Sun Ra LLC, Cosmic Myth Records, Sundays, Modern Harmonic, and Art Yard /Strut, and Sun Ra Bandcamp for all of the great music that they're sharing with us affordably across all different kinds of platforms and mediums. It's just like I never imagined, I never thought it would come true that we would get access to all this music in such great quality when I first started out as a Sun Ra fan. So kudos to everybody that does that work to preserve Sun Ra's legacy and to make sure that it's taken care of, and that the young folks that are coming up, that are just discovering this, will always have access to it, and that we'll always remember Sun Ra, and he'll always has his place in music history. It's really an incredible achievement if you think about it, where we're at in 2023 as far as the Sun Ra legacy, the recordings, the fact that Marshall and the band are still out there playing. I'm almost speechless even thinking about it. So the other thing that I will touch back on, and we're not going to go in deep, but the books from 2022, Sun Ra Sundays by Roger Coleman, Sam Bird, available directly from the publisher that released it in physical format as well as PDF. And I know it's available on Amazon. And hopefully, Roger and Sam, we can have you on to do a dedicated Sun Ra Sundays session sometime in the future. So everybody, get your concept and your copy and read up on that so that we're prepared with our homework for that session. And then the other book that I showed in one of the previous live streams, Sun Ra Art on Saturn, and I am going to go get it because it's just so beautiful. I can't not show it. It really deserves praise from a production standpoint. It is absolutely freaking beautiful. The printing quality, the binding, the presentation, the size, the quality of the scans and the presentation, the variety of multiple versions of releases that had more than one cover, the tastefulness of the photo restoration and the color correction. Like, they're very well presented, but they're not overly cleaned up and sanitized. The handmade nature, the DIY nature still comes through. But they're just it's almost it's a museum quality presentation.
Yeah.
And the price point, considering the price of inflation and the cost of paper, ink, printing, and shipping, the fact that this has a list price of $75 and you can get it on Amazon for $55.
Wow.
I mean, it's worth every penny. And it's beautiful to sit and look at. My only wish for this, and it's not a critique because this is really, I think, it's about the design, it's about the variety, it's about the DIY nature, it's about the visuals and not necessarily the details and the nitty gritty. My wish for this as a graphic designer and a researcher would be a bibliography or a master list of notations for all of the illustrations. And I can understand aesthetically, by focusing on the art, why they wouldn't want to have them as captions or footnotes at the bottom of the page. But I would have loved a reference somewhere in the back saying page 211 is variant 2 or 3 of this particular record, because unless you've seen them before, it's really hard to figure out for me what album some of these artworks are associated with.
Yeah.
And it's not a criticism, it's an observation. So it's really more about the impression from an art experience than this being a discographical album collector's resource, right? If you're a Saturn collector, this is not where you're going to go to find out if, what version of what record you have and what it's worth and how many copies were printed. This is really an art book. What do you think, Steve? Did you get this one?
I did, and I'm probably about 15 pages in it because I don't want to miss a thing when I read through it. I think I read Irwin's, his opening section there. And it's the kind of book where if you go through a couple of pages a night, then that's good work. That is I don't know. What do you think? Top 5 book? I mean, it's right up there.
Yeah, it's in the canon for sure. Yeah.
It's no regrets buying that. That was just it's like a treasure.
Yeah, it would be in the top 5. And I'd like to circle back on the books someday. But yeah, I mean, I would say this Space is the Place by John Swed, Earthly Recordings of Sun Ra by Campbell and Trent, Art on Sun Ra by Chusett and Reisman, Immeasurable Equations, The Poetry of Sun Ra. Those are the ones that come to mind. And then I've got a soft spot for a bunch of them. But yeah, this is canon and much appreciated.
Yeah.
And clearly a labor of love, not just from the collectors that bought and kept and preserved all of these records, but Irwin and Chris Reisman being able to contact the community and these collectors sharing their collections in such a high quality. I don't know what went into the photographing and production of this book, but it just speaks labor of love for Sun Ra.
I was going to say the exact same thing. That's what it is.
Yeah,
So
really
if you don't
cherished.
have it, I didn't even realize it's going down to $55. That's like a steal.
Yeah, it's like the third of the price of the pre-order.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the pre-order was an unquestionable, purchase. At $55, it's like, yeah, very well worth it. So that's the year 2022 in releases, not including the digital releases on Bandcamp. We can touch on those if you all want in another show, but it's just not my area of expertise. I haven't focused on them. Plus, they don't look good when I hold them up on screen like the record covers do. Sam Bird says that the Glenn Jones essay from the Art on Saturn Sun Ra book is excellent. Yes, there are a couple of essays, maybe 15 pages of text in that book, and they are excellent. So that kind of wraps up our year in review. I unfortunately have, as I said, have not seen the orchestra live led by Marshall Allen in years now. So I can't speak to what the shows were like, how the band sounds, what tunes they're playing. So if any of you in the chat have any feedbacks, Steve, have you gotten to see them lately?
No, they need to come up to the New England area. And that's the problem I have, is that they don't come up this way very often these days. But I would love to see them live. Absolutely. And usually you get to hang out with them a little bit, either between sets or, you and I have. I know we've, go down to Providence. We listen to Yaya do a little bit of sax work for us before the show. Remember that? 2009 time period. So yeah, I'd love to see them.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't been traveling as close to us as they did in previous years, and just my reach as far as the closest city for me to go to would be New York City, and the days of all-nighters driving home from New York at 5 a.m. are long past.
We have done it in the past, though.
Yeah, but it's not in the cards for me anymore. So until they come a little bit closer, I'm just going to have to hear the reports from all of you. So yeah, please chime in the comments if you have any reflections on current orchestra performances. Would love to hear your thoughts, and also if there are any noteworthy videos on YouTube that you think are particularly representative of how the band sounds, or particular compositions that they're busting out that are either rare or new or are Marshall focused. Please include those in the comments, because every time I hear Marshall and the band, I love it. It's just increasingly hard to keep up. So I wish them healthy and the orchestra a healthy and productive year this year. And intergalactic music, Jason, you make a great point. There is one digital release that we should talk about, and that's Ellingtonia Volume 1. So I will ask you, Steve, we're at 9:43, so we're an hour and 43 minutes. Would you agree that a deep dive in a universe in blue, we should save that for another day and do it appreciated.
That's its own show.
Deep dive into that
Absolutely.
album and also all of the surrounding Slugs material.
There's a lot out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to cut that off. I know we said we would circle back on it, but we could honestly, I think if we got into it, we could do another hour and a half or 2 hours just on Universe and Blue and the Slug Saloon period.
Yeah.
Because just the things that you and I talked about, that I realized today, or we realized on our own when we were doing our homework, kind of I need to sit with and think about a little bit as far as the origin of those bonus tracks and the previous versions that we had heard. I'd like to collect my thoughts a little bit more on that because it really changes how I'm perceiving the Universe in Blue reissue, which I thought was amazing to begin with from a sound quality standpoint. But the bonus tracks, really thinking about them in context, kind of spun my thoughts on that. Then I get
there's a whole another thing too, is let's not forget at Slugs, that's where Lee Morgan, where he was shot and killed. Yep. I think February of 1972. There's a movie, and by the way, that's mentioned in the Bandcamp release that I didn't know this, but there's actually a movie that I plan to watch, and that gives more context into, I mean, that was one heck of a place, apparently, the Slugs. Not a place you normally would want to be hanging around.
Yeah,
there's a whole story there.
Yeah, that movie documentary is highly recommended. I believe it was called either I Called Him Morgan or They Called Him Morgan.
Yeah, Morgan. Something like that. Yeah.
It is available on streaming platforms and was excellent.
You watched it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's on my to-do list.
Yeah, and you know, Lee was a great player. It's an interesting and sad story, but as far as expanding on the Slugs history, yeah, it's good that you made note of that. But there's just so much more we could say about Universe in Blue and Slug Saloon, so we'll do it another day. So we'll close out tonight. I'm going to just look at the comments, and we'll close out tonight by talking a little bit about Ellingtonia Volume 1. Sam says one of his wish list items for 2023 is Ellingtonia Volume 2, and I would agree. Brad says Sun Ra plays Fletcher Henderson. Brad, this is a wish list item for you, right? Because unless I've completely blacked something out, Sun Ra plays Fletcher Henderson does not officially exist, but should. Steve, have I ever shared my Sun Ra plays Fletcher Henderson playlist with you?
I think you have. It's been a while. I need to listen to it.
Working on. But yeah, I mean, Brad, that's a no-brainer. Yeah. The estate should absolutely put out a Sun Ra plays Fletcher Henderson compilation. Yeah. And that, you know, that's the beauty of digital and Bandcamp, and for me is releases like that can be one-offs, like the John Gilmore Volume 1 and 2 collection that they released, things that might not warrant a physical pressing, that they might not be able to sell the numbers that validates releasing it physically on CD or vinyl, but is a really great release. And Bandcamp and digital allows them to do that in a really cool way. So let me just get this back going here, and then we're going to go to Ellingtonia Volume 1. And let me just look at the comments here. Time has flown. Thank you all for being here and bearing with me personally as I get comfortable with this new StreamYard platform and navigating that. Thank you, Steve, for joining me. It's always great to see you, but it's really cool to expand the conversation and get a bunch of voices together.
Really. Thanks for having me. This has been a real pleasure for me. And
you're welcome.
One thing I learned is make sure you plug your computer in any future co-hosts.
Yeah, right. And you're always welcome. And to those of you in the chat, thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your patience. And any one of you that want to drop a private message to the Sun Ra Archive Facebook that want to be involved in a future show, like I said, we're going to have John Hunt from Sundays on to talk about the graphic design of the Sun Ra reissues. I'm hoping that we're going to have brother Brad Marcus on for a show about the Chicago era, Alton Abraham and L Saturn research. That we'll have Sam and Roger on to talk Sun Ra Sundays. So, by all means, get in touch if you want to do a show, if there's a particular subject. And if you have any friends in the community that are doing work around Sun Ra, releasing records, doing covers in their bands, etc. If you're friends with the orchestra, let them know that we're out here doing this and that they're always welcome. The door's always open. I've contacted lots of people in years past, but I respectfully, if I don't hear back or I've gotten a no, I don't hound them. So by all means, this is as much your platform as mine. So if you want to round up the community and get them on a future show, by all means, please let me know. And see here. Sam says for volume 2 of Ellingtonia, solitude, 3 little words, perdido, I got it bad, flamingo, satin doll, take the A train, and in a sentimental mood. So Sam's clearly already making his own, curating his own playlist. And so I would imagine that Mr. Chusid is probably already thinking about it, and maybe we can hit up the Sun Ra and Sun Ra appreciation socials and let it be known that we want more volumes of Ellingtonia and that we want Sun Ra plays Fletcher Henderson, because the band camp's a great forum to do that. And Irwin and the LLC have done some great compilations. Space Age is Here to Stay on Sundays, which was the vocals and the chants, and Sun Ra, the June Tyson, what is it? Queen of Saturn compilation, the Exotica compilation. Clearly, they have a great love for the compilation medium, so I think that they'd be all ears. So in the background, we're hearing Ellingtonia Volume 1. Steve, do you have this one?
No, I haven't listened to this yet, so this is another one that's on my to-do list.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So this was a compilation that came out in 2022, Sun Ra Bandcamp.
There's your light show right there, by the way. Did you see that?
What's that?
On your screen is your
light show. I'm toggling between screens. So one of the things I love about Bandcamp and kudos to Bandcamp and Sun Ra LLC is that they make a variety of options available, including FLAC, lossless, which is what I have for Ellingtonia. But so this compilation by Irwin Chusid is all Duke Ellington compositions as performed by Sun Ra and the orchestra through the years. And I actually deconstructed it for my study purposes, and I reordered it in chronological order. So the tune that we're hearing now is from an unknown date, and the song is Caravan from Sun Studio with the catalog number SR-R129. And there is another song on this compilation from Sun Studio, the same undated session version of It Don't Mean a Thing If You Ain't Got That Swing. Now, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, and correct me, Steve, but I believe Sun Studio was the apartment in New York City. And this sounds like very similar sonically to the late 60s period that the Roratorio vinyl reissues came from, that Michael Anderson curated and put out. So my guess on these is that if it's Sun Studio and from the Sonics, that it's probably like around 1968, 69 for Caravan, and it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. What do you think?
It does have that feel. I have to listen to that for sure. It's hard to pick up on your end, but it does have that mid to late 60s sound to it. Now you just mentioned the track, is that right?
But yeah, it sounds like the rehearsal sessions from New York that came out on Roratorio.
Yeah. Great albums, by the way.
Yeah, great albums.
Yeah.
Great albums that are now out of print. I can't remember who was the head of Roratorio.
James Lindblom.
James Lindblom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for those, James. It's my understanding that if you're lucky enough to have gotten those Roratorio vinyls, that those will remain in that form unreleased, or they won't be re-released by Sun Ra LLC. If those tracks end up getting re-released in the future, it will be as a part of different compilations or coupled with period recordings, but that those Roratorios will kind of remain as they were forever, which is kind of cool. Cool that they came out. Cool that the material was so special. So the next track chronologically is from 1951. And this is Sun Ra's apartment in Chicago with Wilbur Ware playing Duke's Place.
Man, you really make me want to go out and listen to this one. Is it on vinyl or CD?
I'm sorry. Is what on vinyl or CD?
The Ellingtonia, right? It's on Bandcamp, but is it?
Bandcamp, no. It doesn't have a physical release on CD or.
Oh, so it's just digital.
Streaming or digital.
Yeah.
Interesting to get another song with Sun Ra and Wilbur Ware, because as I think most of us probably remember, the 1987 WKCR broadcast where Sun Ra brought some rarities to play over the air. One of those songs is really well known among collectors. It was a duet between Sun Ra and Wilbur Ware on stand-up bass, and that was the only other song from that session that we had heard. So to hear that there's more from that is really cool. With Sun Ra playing sounds like the Celeste, some kind of electric piano. Let's see if anyone knows in the chat. No. Yeah, so it sounds like some kind of hammered electric piano instrument. Certainly not acoustic piano or the solo box, but very cool tune. So we jump from those unknown years in this 1951 to 1976.
Composition written by Duke Ellington is entitled "Slippery Horn."
John Gilmore introducing "Slippery Horn" from 1976, unknown date, from Paris.
It sounds like these are all previously unreleased then.
Yes, they are.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's beyond cool. It's beyond cool. Next one up, 1978 from Toronto, Prelude to a Kiss. Yeah, and there's definitely some analog artifacts. Clearly this was tape, but if this is coming from the Sun Ra Music Archive under Michael Anderson's care, obviously these are as close generationally to the master as possible, and these all sound like professional or at least board recordings.
I love one of the comments here from Third Coast. Universe in Blue just ordered. So there you go, Christopher.
There you go. Next up, in chronological order, we've got a 1980 version from Detroit of Stompy Jones by Duke Ellington. And the other caveat, too, just in case you're curious or maddened by the fact that I'm not playing complete songs, that is out of respect for the LLC and their copyrights, and the to avoid getting copyright claims on YouTube. I'm not going to be playing complete performances. I'm just going to play little bits for examples, but not complete tracks. So as much as it might drive you crazy, it's intentionally. So that one wasn't performed a ton, Stompy Jones. And it makes me think, hearing the arrangement is for the musicians in the group that are players themselves, familiar with Sonny and Duke, but also maybe had access to the Sun Ra scores and the LOC. I'd love to hear the story about how Sun Ra's practice of transcribing the work of Duke Ellington or Fletcher Henderson, and what his process was for that, and what his process for rehearsing and instructing the band was, right? So Stompy Jones, once Sun Ra decided that they wanted to perform it and he transcribed it, would he create an arrangement and would it stay in the book? Or I wonder if they revisited arrangements and he provided updates and updated notation and arrangements to these as they got played out by the orchestra. I'd love to learn more about that. So these pictures that are up on the screen, shout out to Bergen Matthews, Birmingham, Alabama, co-author of the Doc Adams book with Doc Adam. Bergen has his own radio show, The Lost Child, and his scholarship and research is the source of those images of Sonny Herman Blunt in Birmingham, Alabama, that we saw from the newspapers. Bergen, hopefully we'll have him on an upcoming show. If you haven't heard the interview on the Sun Ra Archive podcast that I did with Bergen about Doc Adams and his book, you should definitely listen to it. It's fascinating. But Bergen's scholarship has continued since then, and I believe he's got a new project that's going to be coming out this year. So stay tuned for details on that. Because if you've read the Doc book, not just as a jazz fan, but specifically as a Sun Ra fan, the stories that are in there are magical and transportational. To be able to close your eyes and think about the words he's written and put yourself back in the rehearsal room with Herman Blunt, with Sonny before the days of Sun Ra in Birmingham. His books are great, so I can't wait to hear what he does next. So a digression based on the picture that was just up. But back to Ellingtonia, 1980. Willisau. Lightning is up next. This one was recorded and released on a bunch of period albums from 1980. Sunrise in Different Dimensions comes to mind.
Yeah.
So this isn't so much a rarity, but still a great arrangement of Duke's Lightning. 1982, Mannheim, Sophisticated Lady. Sun Ra on organ.
Great stuff.
Yeah. This is I appreciate you bringing this up in the chat, folks, that this deserves attention, because it really does. And I don't want to overlook it just because it's digital. That wasn't intentional, because it is an absolute standout release for the year. And I would say, for me, just my, your mileage, it may vary. Other than Living Sky and Universe in Blue, this one has given me the most joy per minute as far as new discoveries. So highly recommended. I've just gotten a real kick out of this album. I love Duke Ellington and I love Sun Ra, so it's like perfect. So who knows? Maybe this will come out physically in the future. Fingers crossed. Drop Me Off in Harlem. This one's from Columbus, 1985. Another one from 1985, Seattle. The composition Daydream. Again, I realize we're just sampling these things, but I think you can hear even just over the speakers in the background that for concert recordings, previously unreleased concert recordings, the fidelity of these are fantastic compared to what we're used to with concert recordings that we traded for back in the day. Second to last tune, the first of two songs from 1987, is East St. Louis Toodaloo.
Duke would be proud.
Yeah, I just, for me, with Sun Ra playing Ellington and Henderson, not that there wasn't joy and vitality in all his playing, but I just get such a sense of happiness and joy when Sun Ra's playing these songs, that they really meant a lot to him and that he got a big kick out of them too, which is really neat to hear. It's a different performance sense than his own compositions. You can just really hear him having fun. It's almost like he's a kid again. That he would have been a teenager growing up with these records, that they're really formative. And I almost like to think I can hear him becoming a kid again in these performances.
Paying respect.
And a shout out to for Grateful Dead fans. I love this song, but it always reminds me of the Grateful Dead because the lyricist Robert Hunter took a Duke Ellington reference and incorporated it into Mississippi half-step Uptown Toodaloo in homage to Duke's East St. Louis Toodaloo. Magical. And then the last track that I have reordered here is another 87 performance from Warsaw and Mood Indigo. And we'll play it out on this one. Forgive me if that preview and skipping around in volume was clunky. I'll have to watch it back and see how it is, but just doing this for the first time. So Brad says they did Eat St. Louis, Toodaloo in Des Moines, Iowa, 1998. So 98 would have been the Marshall Allen Orchestra. That's cool. Sam says he's definitely paying respect and passing on his love of Duke and Fletcher. Jason, Mr. Intergalactic, says East St. Louis Toodaloo is very nicely cleaned up from the bootleg CD. New York bootleg CD 87. It's not ringing a bell. Do you know which one that is, Steve?
No.
Jason, what was the name of that boot? It's not ringing a bell, but yeah. So I wonder if part of this is that Irwin and the estate are repurposing and reclaiming some material that's been floating around in the gray market.
Are any of these audience recordings or?
No. They sound to me, and I could be wrong, but they sound to me like they're all professional board or front of house tapes.
Yeah.
That would have been made by the venue and passed on to the band. I'm not sure if any of them is really multi-track professional live album recording quality. They're probably 2-track stereo recordings, but I don't hear any audience, meaning unauthorized recordings here. There might be audience mics mixed in with the board feed to give it a rounder mix, but I don't think any of these are unauthorized audience recordings. And then other than the 3 that we started out with from Sun Studio in New York and Sun Ra's apartment in Chicago, the rest of them are all live. Interesting. So Jason Voss, Intergalactic Music, Rare Sun Ra YouTube channel says Duke Ellington's Sound of Space. So I guess I'm missing this. That's not a Sun Ra bootleg CD that this version was cleaned up from. So we'll leave that for another day. If you can add a comment there, Jason. So 10-12.
Just based on the amount of comments on this, though, I mean, there's a lot of comments on this Ellingtonia section. So obviously, I think we hit a nerve here with these recordings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just that the music's great, but that it's a great release too.
Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, so, jokingly, like we said, I mean, I'm sure we all have in some fashion or another, whether it's notes or playlists, probably have our own Sun Ra Plays Duke, Sun Ra Plays Fletcher playlist. So maybe in the future we could do some deep dive sessions around those very topics. But yeah, I mean, at this point, as time goes on, I don't know about you folks, but anything that connects back to jazz is really welcome and inspirational and much needed medicine for me. Any chance to listen to and talk about jazz music, I'll take any time, because very few people are doing it anymore. I can't find it anywhere else. I mean, there's lighthouse organizations like WKCR Radio, Columbia University and stuff, but it's just like, I don't know about you all, but I don't have enough time, and I don't make enough time in my day to do this. So this is a great opportunity for me. So thank you. Any closing thoughts, Steve?
Well, I would again thank you for having me participate. It's been a real joy for me. I'm really hoping that your shows continue. I suspect they will. And, let's get some other co-hosts up there. I'll be happy to come back at some point, but willing to pass it off to somebody else. There's a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah.
So, great show, Christopher. Really nice job.
It's always a pleasure spending time with you, Steve. I'm glad that we got to share it because
A lot of fun.
yeah, it is a lot of fun. It's always more fun with someone else. So enjoy your evening. Let's talk again soon. And thank you everybody in the chat that participated. Thank you to everybody that's that's watching on YouTube that's not participating in the chat. I would to continue on with Steve's thought. I would humbly ask all of you, if you find this of value, please like it, please share it, please subscribe to the channel. Please let me know about projects you're doing. Please don't be shy about coming on and co-hosting. This is not about any one of us as a personality or a voice. This is about the community. This is about the energy of the music, preserving the legacy of Sun Ra, supporting Marshall and the orchestra. So the more the merrier. Anything that we can each do in our own small way to make this bigger and help heal the planet and change our destiny. I humbly petition you to all do that in your own way. So thank you. And have a good night. Enjoy your weekends. And let's plan on meeting back here, same time, same. I'm going to unmask the Batman channel next Friday. And I'll drop a post early this week as to what the subject of the show will be. So thanks again. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. I can't turn it off.